The wind howled outside the small, weathered house on the edge of Toledo, Ohio, as Emily Carter, 24, trudged through the front door, her scarf still damp from the sleet. The faint scent of burnt coffee clung to her coat from her shift at the insurance office downtown. Inside, the living room was dimly lit, the Christmas tree sagging under the weight of faded ornaments and a string of lights that flickered like it was on its last breath. Emily's family, her parents, Frank and Susan, and her 17-year-old brother, Ethan, was already gathered around the dining table. The air was thick with tension, the kind that had been simmering for years but never quite boiled over. Until tonight, Emily had been the family's anchor since she was 20. After Frank lost his job at the auto parts factory during a brutal layoffs wave, and Susan's part-time gig at the local library barely covered groceries, Emily stepped up. Her paycheck from the insurance company paid the electric bill, kept the water running, and ensured the internet stayed on for Ethan's schoolwork. Last winter, when the furnace broke, it was Emily's overtime hours that got it fixed. She wasn't just a daughter, she was the glue holding the house together. But to Frank and Susan, she was something else, a burden. A freeloader who dared to exist in their home. Dinner started quietly, the clink of forks against chipped plates the only sound breaking the silence. Susan set down a platter of overcooked ham, her face tight with exhaustion. Frank sat at the head of the table, clutching a glass of cheap red wine, his eyes fixed on the ceiling like it might reveal some grand truth. Ethan, slouched in his chair, poked at his mashed potatoes, avoiding everyone's gaze. A faint Christmas carol crackled from the kitchen radio, but it did little to mask the unease. Then, without warning, Frank slammed his knife down on the table. The sharp clang made Emily's heart lurch. "Emily," he said, his voice low and venomous, locking eyes with her, "you're a drain on this family. You can't stay here anymore." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Emily froze, her fork hovering over her plate. Susan let out a nervous, brittle laugh, as if trying to pass it off as a cruel joke. But Frank's stare was unyielding. Ethan's head snapped up, a piece of green bean still on his fork, his wide eyes darting between his sister and father. The room felt like it had been sucked dry of air. "What did you just say?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You heard me," Frank growled. "This is my house, and I'm done carrying you. You need to get out." Emily's mind reeled. She wasn't here because she needed to be. She could afford a studio apartment. Maybe even a one-bedroom if she budgeted tightly. She stayed because they needed her. Without her, the lights would go out, the Wi-Fi would die, and the fridge would stay empty. For 4 years, she'd poured every spare dollar into this house. And now, on Christmas Eve, her father was calling her a parasite. Susan opened her mouth to speak, but Frank cut her off with a sharp, "I've made my decision, Susan." Ethan's voice cracked through the silence. "If you can kick her out like that, who's next? Me?" His hands trembled, but his glare was fierce. Emily took a deep breath, steadying herself. She didn't want a screaming match. Not tonight. If they wanted her gone, she'd go, but they'd learn what life was like without her. "All right," she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. Frank's lips twitched into a smug smirk, like he'd won some unspoken battle. Susan kept her head down, her hands twisting in her lap. Maybe she was shocked. Maybe she just didn't care anymore. Emily stood, carrying her half-eaten plate to the sink. She glanced at Ethan, giving him a small nod, the only person in this house she'd miss. The clinking of silverware resumed behind her, but the pretense of dinner was gone. No one was eating now. Upstairs, Emily shut her bedroom door, the creaky hinges sounding like a final farewell. She pulled her suitcase from under the bed and began packing. No tears, no hesitation. Every sweater, every pair of jeans, every trinket she'd bought with her own money went into the bag. This room, once her sanctuary, now felt like a stranger's space. As she folded her last jacket, a soft knock came at the door. "Emily?" Ethan's voice was barely audible. She opened the door, and he stepped inside, his shoulders hunched against the weight of the night. "Are you really leaving?" His eyes were red, but Ethan was tough. He didn't cry. Not in front of her. "They said it, didn't they?" Emily replied, zipping up her suitcase. I don't have a reason to stay. But if you go, who's gonna pay for the electricity? The internet? Ethan's voice wavered. You know they can't afford it. Emily paused, meeting his gaze. He wasn't just scared for her, he was scared for himself. For the chaos that would follow. I know, Ethan, she said softly, but I can't live my life as their ATM. I deserve to breathe, too. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the floor. I want to come with you. You can't, Emily said gently. You're still in high school. You're a minor. They won't let you leave. She sat beside him, resting a hand on his shoulder. Just hold on a little longer. When you're 18, I'll help you get out. I promise. He nodded slowly, like he was memorizing her words. You'll still text me, right? Every day, Emily said, managing a small smile. When Ethan left, Emily finished packing, checking every drawer to ensure she left nothing behind. By midnight, the house was eerily silent, as if it had already forgotten her. She wheeled her suitcase downstairs, the living room light glowing faintly through a crack in the door. She could hear the TV droning, a Christmas special. As if nothing had happened. No one came to stop her. No one called her name. She opened the front door, the icy wind stinging her face, and loaded her suitcase into her car. As she slid into the driver's seat, her hands gripped the steering wheel. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of freedom. This Christmas Eve wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a life she'd fight for. Emily drove to her coworker Lauren's apartment. A cozy two-bedroom just 10 minutes from the office. Lauren didn't ask questions when Emily showed up with dark circles under her eyes and a suitcase in tow. She just pulled her into a hug and said, "Stay as long as you need." The next morning, as dawn broke over Toledo's snow-dusted streets, Emily sat at Lauren's kitchen table with her laptop. She wasn't just leaving, she was severing every tie. She logged into the utility accounts, electric, water, gas, internet, even the streaming services Susan binged every night. One by one, she removed her credit card information. Each click felt like shedding a chain. They'd taken her for granted for too long. Now they'd see what her absence really meant. The fallout came fast. By Wednesday, Emily's phone buzzed with missed calls, 5 from Susan, 2 from Frank, and a text from Ethan. Power's out. Dad's screaming. She didn't reply. An hour later, Susan texted, Emily, what's going on? No internet, no TV. Your dad's furious. What did you do? Emily read the message, her heart steady. They'd wanted her gone. They didn't get to keep her money. 2. That night, Susan called again, her voice trembling. Emily, the house is dark. The bills haven't been paid. We can't even watch Netflix. What's happening? Who do you think's been paying for all that? Emily asked, her tone even. For 4 years, it was me. You believed Dad when he called me a burden. Now you live with that choice. She hung up, feeling no guilt, only clarity. But Frank wasn't done. The next day, Emily got a bank alert. Suspicious login attempt from an unfamiliar device. 3 failed logins, then a password reset request. She knew it was Frank. Ethan confirmed it, whispering over the phone. Dad's been on Mom's old laptop, trying to get into your accounts. He's got her notebook with all the passwords. Emily's fingers flew across her keyboard, changing every password, bank accounts, email, apps, adding 2-factor authentication and fingerprint locks. She wasn't just protecting her money, she was drawing a line. But Frank's desperation only grew. 2 days later, he showed up at Lauren's apartment, pounding on the door, his voice booming through the hall. Emily, open up. You think you can just walk away? Lauren's face paled, but Emily was already dialing 911. He's my father, but he's threatening me, she told the dispatcher, her voice steady. He's trying to break in. Police arrived within minutes, their sirens cutting through the morning quiet. Sir, you're causing a disturbance, an officer said, blocking Frank's path. You need to leave. She's my daughter. Frank roared. I have a right to talk to her. Not like this, the officer replied, when Frank lunged toward the door, shouting about Emily's ingratitude. The officers restrained him, cuffs clicking shut. As they led him away, he hissed, "You'll regret this, Emily." She didn't flinch. "I owe you nothing," she said, her voice carrying through the hall. "You kicked me out. Now you live with it." When the door closed, Lauren turned to her. "Are you okay?" Emily nodded, though her hands shook. "I didn't think it'd come to this. But he doesn't get to control me anymore." The chaos didn't end there. A week later, Emily discovered her car, parked at Lauren's, was gone. Ethan texted, "Your car's outside our house. Mom's coffee mug's inside." Furious, Emily drove to her old street in Lauren's car. There it was, her blue sedan. A grocery receipt with Susan's name on the driver's seat. She confronted Susan at the house. "You stole my car?" Susan shrugged, avoiding her eyes. "It was just sitting there. I borrowed it." "Borrowed?" Emily laughed bitterly. "You've been driving it for days." "And where's my laptop?" Susan's voice was flat. "I sold it. We needed money for your dad's meds." Emily didn't hesitate. She called the police, showing them the receipt and GPS logs proving Susan's theft. "I want my property back," she said, "and I'm pressing charges." Susan's face crumpled. "I'm your mother, Emily. You can't do this. You stole from me." Emily replied, "You don't get to play the mom card now." As the officers instructed Susan to return what remained, Emily felt no satisfaction, only resolve. She'd given this family everything, her money, her time, her heart. They'd thrown it back in her face. Now, she was done. But the storm wasn't over. Ethan's texts grew urgent. "Dad's out on bail. He's saying he'll make you pay." Emily tightened her security, moved to another friend's place, and prepared for whatever came next. She wasn't the scared girl who'd sat silently at that Christmas table. She was a woman reclaiming her life, one fierce step at a time. And she'd make sure Ethan got out, too. The Toledo winter was unrelenting, its icy grip tightening around Emily Carter's new life. Just days after her father, Frank, was hauled off in handcuffs for storming her friend Lauren's apartment, Emily's phone buzzed with a chilling message from an unknown number. "You think you've won? You'll regret turning your back on family." No signature, no need for one. She knew it was Frank. Her heart raced as she checked the county jail's public portal. The screen confirmed her worst fear, released on bail. This morning, less than 12 hours free. And he was already hunting her. Emily's fingers trembled as she screenshot the text and forwarded it to the police. Attaching it to her existing report, she called her brother, Ethan, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. "Ethan, do you know who bailed Dad out?" His reply was a whisper, like he was hiding in his room. "It was Uncle Ray, Dad's old drinking buddy. Yesterday, I heard Dad on the phone, begging for cash. This morning, Ray dropped off an envelope for Mom and left." Emily's stomach churned. Ray wasn't just a friend, he was trouble. The kind of guy who'd once trashed a bar and laughed about it. If he was bankrolling Frank's release, this wasn't just a father's tantrum. It was a vendetta. Ethan's voice dropped lower. "Last night, Dad said he's gonna make you feel what it's like to be cut out of someone's life. I think he's planning something. Stay safe," Emily said, her mind racing. "If anything feels off, lock your door and call me." "Got it?" "Got it," Ethan replied, his voice heavy with the weight of living in a house that felt more like a cage. Emily didn't waste time. She packed her essentials, clothes, laptop, documents, and left Lauren's apartment that night. Lauren, wide-eyed with worry, hugged her tightly. "If he shows up again, I'm calling the cops." "You focus on you." Emily nodded, grateful but resolute. She wasn't running scared, she was choosing survival. Her co-worker Nora, who'd once offered her a spare room, welcomed her without hesitation. "Bring whatever you need," Nora said over the phone. "You're safe here." By midnight, Emily was settled in Nora's modest duplex on the west side of Toledo. A quiet neighborhood far from her old street. She spent hours fortifying her digital life. New passwords, two-factor authentication, fingerprint locks on every account. Frank wouldn't get another chance to claw his way into her world. But the threats kept coming. Another text arrived the next night. "You can run. But family's forever. Emily." She forwarded it to the police, her jaw tight. This wasn't just anger, it was obsession. She wasn't just a daughter to Frank anymore, she was a symbol of his failure. And he'd burn everything down to prove he still had power. Determined to reclaim what was hers, Emily requested a civil standby from the Toledo Police Department to return to her old house. 2 days later, she stood on the cracked porch of the place she'd once called home. A burly officer named Martinez at her side. Ethan was waiting, his black backpack slung over one shoulder. His face pale but resolute. "You sure you want to go in alone?" he asked. Glancing at the door. "I'm not alone," Emily said, nodding to Martinez. "If they try anything." He steps in. The door creaked open, revealing Susan on the couch, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Frank stood in the kitchen, his eyes burning with silent rage. Emily didn't meet their gazes. She marched upstairs to her old room, now a hollow shell. Her belongings, books, photos, a few keepsakes, were stuffed into trash bags, some scattered on the floor like garbage. She packed quickly, her hands steady despite the ache in her chest. These weren't pieces of home anymore, they were relics of a life she'd outgrown. Downstairs, Susan stood abruptly as Emily dragged her suitcase toward the door. "You're just gonna leave without a word? After everything?" Her voice was sharp, desperate. Emily paused, her back to her mother. "I said plenty over the years. You never listened. It was your father's idea, not mine," Susan blurted, her voice cracking. Emily turned, her eyes cold. "You stood by while he humiliated me. You watched him kick me out on Christmas Eve. You sold my laptop like I was nothing. Don't ask me for a goodbye." Susan's gaze dropped, her silence louder than any apology. Frank stepped forward, his voice a low growl. "You think cutting us off makes you free? You're spitting on your own blood." Emily's laugh was sharp, humorless. "I'm just living what you taught me. If you're not respected, you leave." She pulled a folded document from her pocket, a restraining order petition. "If either of you contacts me, shows up where I live, or tries to touch my accounts, I file this. Next time, it won't be a warning." Martinez nodded. "We've noted the situation. Any further incidents will be taken seriously." Emily turned to Ethan. "You've got a few months left. If it gets too much, call me. I'll come get you." He nodded, a silent pact between them. She left without looking back, the door slamming shut on her past. That same day, Emily changed her phone number, severed every tie to her old address, and signed a lease for a small apartment near her office. It was simple, white walls, a single window overlooking a quiet street, but it was hers. She hung a photo of her and Ethan from happier days, a reminder of the only family that mattered. For the first time, she slept without fear of a knock at the door. Months passed, and Ethan held on, enduring Frank's outbursts and Susan's complaints. But when he turned 18, he was done. He texted Emily, "I'm ready." She drove to the house the next morning, her heart pounding with pride and relief. Ethan stood on the porch, his backpack light, holding just clothes, books, and a framed photo of them from her college days. The house behind him was silent, curtains drawn, no one there to say goodbye. "Taking much?" Emily asked, popping the trunk. Ethan shrugged, a faint smile breaking through. "The rest isn't worth it." She helped him enroll at the local community college, bought him supplies, and treated him to dinner at a diner. Over burgers and fries. They laughed like kids again, the weight of their past lifting. "Think they'll come looking for you?" Emily asked, stirring her soda. "They might," Ethan said, his voice calm. "But I'll do what you did. Cut them off. They don't own me anymore." Emily squeezed his hand, her eyes shining. "I'm proud of you." Frank and Susan's world crumbled without their children. Frank bounced between dead-end jobs, his temper driving away every opportunity. Susan's grocery store gig couldn't cover the rent. And within a year, they were evicted. A distant cousin mentioned they'd moved to a rundown apartment in Toledo's roughest neighborhood, where sirens wailed at night. They sent a letter to Emily's old address, a mix of blame and begging. But it went unanswered. Emily had no debts left to pay. One crisp fall evening, Emily and Ethan sat by the Maumee River, the water reflecting the golden sunset. "You know," Ethan said, tossing a pebble into the current. I'm grateful for you. If you hadn't shown me the way, I'd still be stuck in that house, thinking that's all I deserved. Emily smiled, her heart full. We don't need their kind of family. We've got each other. Their story wasn't just about escaping a toxic home. It was about reclaiming their right to exist. Emily and Ethan learned that love doesn't mean enduring pain. And family isn't defined by blood. It's built on respect, trust, and the courage to walk away when those are gone. For them, happiness wasn't in staying, it was in choosing themselves. Stepping into a future no one could take away.